We all know what a wiki is, right? Well, in programming terms, the framework like a wiki is called open source coding, where basically a bunch of really smart programmers all come together and contribute to code to make it better, safer, less buggy. Well, imagine applying that same principle to your culture, where you're more open so that your teams perform better, feel safer, and generate better ideas. How can you unlock team potential through self-organization and agility? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with George DeMet. He is the founder and co-CEO of Palantir.net, a full-service digital consultancy that uses open source technologies to help others discover, create, and share knowledge. And he's applied these same ideas to his staff and culture. George DeMet, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Thanks, Kendra. It's really great to be here.
Well, so tell us the basic premise of open source and how you've applied that to your culture.
Yeah, so so I think you actually did a pretty great description of it there. I mean, essentially, open source technology is what really is at the foundation of so many of the different tools that we use every day, from our phones, our computer operating systems. Everything that you use probably has some element of open source code in it. And it's been around for a really long time. For us, where we kind of focus is with open source web content management and digital experience. So a lot of the work we do is working with organizations such as healthcare, higher education, technology companies, and the public sector, and to really help them develop sustainable and scalable web platforms that they can use and expand and grow over time. And one of the really kind of big keys with that is avoiding kind of some of the proprietary vendor lock-in, right? Like you buy a package, right? And but you can't really tinker with it. You can't modify it. You can't expand it except in the way that the software company wants you to. And so for us, working with open source is a pretty obvious answer to that. And so we do a lot of work with the Drupal content management platform. It's used to power everything from people's personal blogs all the way up to, state and federal government websites. So it's very versatile, and it's something that I think getting to the people question, right, really ties into a lot of the values that we have as an organization. And so like you said, the transparency, the openness, the working together toward kind of shared goals, as opposed to, doing something because you have to do it this way, or someone tells you have to do it this way.
Right. Less command and control management and proprietary, as you said, and more like an ecosystem.
Exactly. And so for us, there's that idea of open source, right? And then there's also this idea of agility. And when I say agility, it's actually something else that comes out of the software development community. And the idea is that instead of defining everything that needs to be done and doing all the requirements up front, you basically work in small chunks of time, or units of whatever, to develop a product in an iterative way. And at every so often, we call them sprints, you kind of take a look back and you say, okay, here's what we've done, and we're going to build on that for the next iteration. And what it means is that the product, in the case of a software product, can grow, and during the process, you can adjust as you need to address new needs, right? When you try and plan everything out up front, you're inevitably going to get some stuff wrong, no matter how much research you do. So being able to build in this iterative way really results in a better product. And so from an organizational standpoint, right, we've really approached our organization the same way. And so it isn't just about, like we say, it isn't just about doing Agile, it's about embracing agility as an organization, right? Because you can do Agile, but if your organization is still run like a machine, you're only going to get so far.
Yeah, exactly. And I think about all of the things we've experienced over the last few years with the pandemic and then with the quiet quit and the great resignation. I think the more adaptable we are as leaders, the easier it is to adjust to those changes and the less likely we are to lose people and then lose the momentum. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I think there were issues with the pandemic that probably went far beyond any single organization's, structure. I think going through that over the last few years has, really led people to kind of reassess everything in their lives, right? So I don't want to put forward this as some kind of answer to that, because I think there's larger structural issues in society that contributed to that. But during the pandemic, we were very resilient, and it was an opportunity for us to kind of accelerate some of the things that we had been working on already in terms of becoming a more self-organizing, a more self-managing team. And being able to do that really did help a lot of our team members really make it through the pandemic. Folks who were struggling with, just so many other demands. And very simply and very practically, a couple of the things that we had kind of already started to put in place, right, were giving folks the space by only putting them on one or two projects at a time. In our industry, you see a lot of folks, particularly in the agency space, they're going to try and maximize everyone's hours, billable hours within a workday. And very often that means putting them on half a dozen different projects at once. And the context shifting is just impossible with that. And the amount of management overhead required to maintain that is really, really challenging. And so, for us, our focus is on having stable, dedicated teams that work together. Seeing a project through completion. You might have folks who are in different, roles who are either committed full-time, to a single project, or they might, be half-time between two different projects. But really, we're not looking for anyone to be, so fragmented in their work, let alone putting all the complications of their daily personal lives into it, that the cognitive burden at that point becomes too great for anyone.
So it's really interesting. So you're not really measuring then utilization with your staff?
We do measure utilization. Okay. We do have all of the normal, I think metrics that, that different companies do. We work with, with a CPA firm that works with a lot of different companies like ours. We do some things a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, we really are measuring a lot of things against generally accepted accounting principles. And what we actually find is that when you don't pack a person's day with so many different things, when you let them have the choice, right? Choosing as a team, right? Which parts of the project they're going to work on in this sprint, or and giving them that freedom and flexibility, we actually see a lot less spoilage than we used to see back when, folks would be resourced on many more projects. So it actually works out really well, not just from a personal well-being standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint as well.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I've always subscribed to a similar philosophy. Matter of fact, as I was researching you, you and I have very similar, experiences and backgrounds even. But one of the things that I have always done, and it sounds like you've done as well, is created an environment where it was this like kind of hybrid environment before a hybrid was a thing.
Yes. Yeah. So
we've always been hybrid.
Yeah. So we've been around as a company for, 27 years at this point. And up until, 2015, right? We had, a physical office and all of that. And the vast majority of our folks did work out of that office, though we did have even early as I think 2007, 2008, we've always had a few folks who worked, remotely. So we were kind of hybrid during that period. And I think that again goes back to working in open source, right? Open source software is built by a community of people all over the world. And so, when you're looking for folks to work with, who have the experience, who have the talent, they're not always going to be like right in your backyard. So, but around 2015, we realized that kind of the infrastructure with, remote collaboration had gotten to the point where you didn't actually need to have a physical office, right? You had tools, like Zoom, like Google Meet, that were really starting to become mature. You had different cloud-based code management environments, local development environments that could sync back and forth between them. So you didn't need to kind of check everything into a server that lived, in the office. And so, what we did in 2015 is we said, hey, we have this office, it's here. If you want to work from the office, that's great. But if you want to work remotely, that's okay too. And a lot of people chose to do that, right? And so we realized very quickly that we had a far larger office than we needed to have. And so, so when that lease period was up, we moved into a smaller space. And then during the pandemic, we gave it up entirely. So, we've been, I would say the way I would characterize it is like, we were hybrid up until around 2015. We were remote first from, 2015 until, 2020, essentially. And we've been a completely remote company since then.
So how do you address, or how would you address leaders who believe and have this idea that work only gets done when it's face-to-face and that collaboration only happens when you're face-to-face?
Well, my experience is that is not true. And I think what you have to do, though, is you really have to build collaboration into the way that you work, right? If you're not in the same room or in the same office with somebody, you have to make a deliberate effort to collaborate. And one of the things I really appreciate about the way our teams work is that they hold each other accountable. But there is sort of tremendous, I mean, the putting all the collaborative tools aside that have, come out in the last few years, I think it does come down to the way you're working. And if the way you're working is where a manager is coming in every day and doling out what tasks each team member is going to work on, that's probably not going to be as successful as it is when a team gets together and and they decide themselves what they're going to work on during that sprint. And they're looking at it in terms of, okay, what is the highest priority, the thing that is going to deliver the most value, in this next 2-week period. And if we're working on that, what are the different tasks that need to be done? And the team members themselves take those on. They don't have somebody who's telling, Bob, you do this, Susie, you do that. They work that out. They make those decisions themselves as a team.
So what is your role? What do you see your role as the leader?
Yeah, I mean, my role is a lot of coordination. My role is really focused around making sure that folks have the context and the scaffolding, and that they understand where the guardrails might be, right? We are agile, we are self-organizing. Folks have a lot of autonomy, but obviously, there's only so far you can go, right? There's certain decisions that, that have to be reserved because they impact, the business as a whole, right? But it's important for folks to know where those are, right? And so that's part of my job. So we have at Palantir, we have essentially 2 CEOs. So Tiffany Ferris, she is the majority owner, she's the CEO, and she does a lot of work directly with the project teams as well as with clients. And I'm more of the kind of internally focused, more operationally focused person. So, so that's really kind of where I really see, actually both of us really see our roles as primarily around helping build that context and scaffolding and making sure the teams have what they need in order to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I like the word context because I think a lot of times we forget that, especially when you're bringing new people on, that you have to build that context too.
Absolutely. And yeah, especially for us, right? Because, it's one of the things we come in and we're like, yeah, you know what, you're not going to have a manager, right? And for folks who are used to coming from that traditional environment, it's very, it can be a little bit unsettling, right? It's like, well, who's going to look after me? Who's going to make sure that, I have career advancement opportunities? And the way we address that is we have a team. Each person they're part of what we call a pod. It's a professional and organizational development team. And so they have 2 folks who work with them, one who's kind of from a project or discipline perspective, one who might be from a team or from a company or organizational perspective. And together, they kind of work as peer coaches to meet with that person to kind of understand what their goals are, their professional development goals, and to help them, provide support to them as they pursue those goals. And I really love this because it means that at our company, your career isn't subject to the whims of, whatever manager you happen to be under, right? And that's really important. We really want folks to be driving their own career paths as much as possible, and to have, support from multiple individuals within the team as they pursue those goals.
Is that for everybody? Is everyone a participant in a pod? Okay. Huh,
yeah. So
really
everyone. Yeah. And the, the pod representatives are made up of folks from the team as well. We also work with a few external coaches, so my pod, I work with both someone internally who's been with the company a really long time, and I also work with an external coach, but they also work together. And, so when I'm talking about my professional development goals, they're going to ask me questions. They're going to hold me accountable and do all of those things.
That's great. I
Yeah.
just picked up this book at a conference I was at a couple weeks ago. It's called Insight. Have you heard of this one,
Ooh, not
Tasha?
familiar with that one.
Yeah.
No. Huh.
Anyway, we got to hear her speak, and one of her premises is around self-awareness. I mean, that's what the
Mhm.
premise of the whole book is. But one of her suggestions is to surround yourself by 2 to 3 people who kind
Yep.
of help call out your blind spots a little bit more, or those people that will be, a little bit more honest with you about what you are, how you're showing up in the world. That sounds a
Right.
little bit like what you've created with the pods.
Yeah, it's very similar. So it really is about, and we're very explicit, like this is a coaching relationship, right? This is
Uh-huh.
not a management relationship. And it is, the pod meetings are designed to be that, kind of very psychologically safe space, where people can talk about, you know, their frustrations, their roadblocks and everything. And there won't be any negative repercussions, right, that come out of that. That the pod representatives are there to listen, and to ask questions and help provide resources for team members who might be struggling with this or that or the other thing.
Mm-hmm. So you just used a term that I'm very familiar with, but I don't know if our listeners are, which is psychological safety.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Okay, so yeah, it's so psychological safety. I think the textbook definition is that the feeling that you can speak up when you see something or hear something that's kind of going wrong, and that you can feel comfortable doing that, without doing that without there being repercussions for your career, right? So it's probably going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but you're not going to get demoted or fired because you brought up, some problem or issue that you saw,
Or even
uh,
a failure, right?
or
Or
a
your
failure.
own failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is, you have to, that's like at the bedrock, that's like a prerequisite, right, for all of this, is building and fostering that. And so it's just something we're always working on. But the focus on coaching, I think, really helps foster that, because it's a space where folks can, you're asking powerful questions. You're not telling someone what to do or what they should do, but you're really helping them find the answer within themselves. But yeah, it is absolutely key. And yeah, if you don't have psychological safety, then this sort of thing is probably not for your organization, really, really bluntly.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't think you can't create those conditions for
Right.
people to thrive if they're living in fear.
Right.
And the other thing about that, I think a lot of leaders forget, is that when you have created an environment where it's fearful, you're also stifling innovation,
Yep.
because people might have an idea or have a thought that could be actually transformational, but they are so hesitant to bring it forward that it gets lost because of
Absolutely.
fear. And
Yeah.
so I think psychological safety is actually one of those very important things for the new modern culture. And I love the way that you're also bringing it in, which is through just really powerful coaching. I think other ways is actually letting people fail. I had an interview a couple of weeks ago with another leader who's running a pharmaceutical or biotechnology company where science in and of itself is failure, right? I mean, that is
Right.
the only way science progresses, is through
Yep.
failure. But that word failure is such a scary word in our society. What were
So
you going to
one of
say?
the yeah, so it's great that you brought that up. So the way we do a lot of experiments, and that's another kind of key part of organizational agility, right? Is, so if someone has an idea, right, something they want to try, and they get other folks on board with that idea. But we're not really sure if it's going to work or not, right? Then let's design an experiment where we try it out in a particular context for a set amount of time. And then we go back at the end of the time and we say, well, what did we learn, right? What worked? What didn't work? And then that goes into deciding, okay, well, are we going to continue forward with this as it is? Are we going to continue forward with some modifications, or are we going to try a different approach, right? And I think that you're absolutely right. Like, failure is absolutely key. I think the word failure makes a lot of people feel sad. So we talk about it as well. Let's run an experiment on that, and let's see what we can learn from it, right? Uh-huh. And that's we've had a lot of really great things come out of that, just in terms of how we look at and how we structure the pods that I was talking about before, or how we take a look at advancement structures within the organization. We're constantly evolving and changing those based on what works and what doesn't, and the feedback that comes out of it and the ideas that people have.
Well, and that comes back around to the idea of an ecosystem, where this is constant. You're constantly adapting to the changing conditions, the new people that come in, the changes to the market, the new technologies that come out. I mean, the more rigid we are with our leadership style, and the more rigid we are with culture, the less likely we are, I think, to thrive in this new world. And boy, if there's anything COVID taught us, it was about being flexible and iterative.
Yeah, for sure. In ways that none of us ever imagined. But I actually think it's been around. I think the world has been changing for a while now. And, we really, I was talking about organizations run like machines. And I think that kind of thinking comes out of a more industrial, era, right? When you think about manufacturing things on a, assembly line or something like that, right? And, and the world hasn't been that way for a while. And particularly if for the most jobs, at least here in the United States, right, are what they call knowledge workers, right? And so you have to be bringing, kind of your whole self to the table. And, you say ecosystem. I think that's a great analogy. We talk about, organizations as like really kind of living organisms, right? That we're kind of different parts and systems that are working together in harmony. So,
well, I think that's a perfect way to end. I love that. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time today, George. This was an awesome conversation. And I can't wait to check back in with you in a little bit, in a couple months, and see how you're doing and to see how you've adapted.
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll be all kinds of change. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.